button. I'm hitting it. Right. And we are live. So hello and welcome everybody to Third Eye Salon, where in each and every show, we take a fresh look between the veils of reality. I'm Kat Udero, psychic empath and psychic wrangler. And before we see who I've wrangled in today for the salon, I want to tell you that our show for today, we're going to be looking between the veils of NDEs, Archangels, and bringing spirituality and spiritual awakening to the corporate world who really need it. So before we get into saying hello to our lovely guest, Josie Thomson, we're going to say hello to Miss Linda. Linda, how are you? How are you doing today? I love you.
Doing wonderful. I'm so excited. This is, again, I always say this, I sound like a broken record. It's going to be a great show. It's a great show. And I can already feel the energy is so beautiful. So I can't wait to see who's going to join me in chat. I am, for those that don't know me, a psychic and conscious business coach. And I will be your live chat host. And as always, my policy is to play nice or get out, because we're here to support each other and not prove that we're right. So be in the learning and curiosity mode. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe so that we can grow our community. And check out the links in the description below. And I want to thank everybody who has been so wonderful donating to Third Eye Salon. Because of you, we'll be having some great things coming in the future. Not that they're not here already. And make sure you join our Facebook group and our event page, because at the event page, you can share it. So with that, I want to say hello to Josie. I'm excited to learn so much more about you, and I'm going to let Kat tell everybody more about you, but welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, we stole Josie from Karen Swain. Karen had her on her show, and it was one of those conversations where you're like, fascinating, fascinating. So we wanted to get her in, and we finally got her in, so it's awesome. And also on the show today, we have got Michelle Ambergy. She is the Awakener, the Araku, and BFFs with Archangel Michael. Michelle, I love you. I'm in your home right now. You're just down the hall from me. How are you? I know how you're doing. You're doing great.
And that's all anybody needs to know. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, guys. And Josie, welcome. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about you. And I'm so excited, and I love our Aussie friends. So yay.
Yay.
Absolutely. And then last but never least, it's our adopted daughter, Spirit, ET, and OBE experiencer, Jillian Leonard. Jillian, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying the evening. I've been watching Josie's videos. I just love her energy. Absolutely love it. I'm so looking forward to talking to you today, and just happy to be here as always.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, let's hop into Josie's bio, and then we'll get into this juicy conversation. So Josie Thomson is a multi-award winning master coach, author, cancer survivor, and single mother, and a force of transformation in the lives of many. Josie was awarded the International Gold Stevie Award for Maverick of the Year in 2014 and 2015, the Women in Business Coach Mentor of the Year 2014 Silver Award in New York City, and is a former Telstra Business Woman of the Year Finalist. As a coach, inspirational speaker, and guide, not to mention her life experience as someone who has faced illness, death twice, and has raised 2 successful children against all odds, she has been inseparable from her own journey towards self-understanding. She lives it. Coach, personal friend, and confidant to the late Sir John Whitmore for over a decade, Josie has completed studies in business, mindfulness, and NeuroLeadership. She has recently co-authored a book, The Wise Advocate, The Inner Voice of Strategic Leadership. She shares practical ways for incorporating exciting scientific advances in the field of strategic coaching and leadership, applied mindfulness, and your inner wise advocate for more profound coaching, breakthroughs, and outcome. If anyone knows how to do this, it's Josie Thomson. Be inspired and flourish. So awesome. Thank you again for being here. You have got a lot of awards. And I wanted to know what it's like for you to be a coach and a mentor in the corporate world when you are a spiritually awake and vibrant woman.
So that's my secret weapon. You know, I think what I've found is that if when I had, let's backtrack, when I had my brain tumor in 2010, and I came out of that surgery, this is when I actually couldn't walk or talk properly for 6 months after surgery. And I remember the neurosurgeon came and saw me and said, Josie, you know, I'm not sure that you will be able to walk and talk properly again. And it was probably a gift that I couldn't talk, because what I would have liked to have said wasn't going to be kind. And at this stage, I was halfway through my master's studies in neuroscience. And so I'd learned enough about neuroscience to make me reasonably dangerous, to know the capacity that we actually do have to repattern, reprogram our brains and our functioning using imagination, which triggers what's called imaginal cells in the body. So when there's this concept called the quantum Zeno effect, which basically means that when you focus your attention on something, a task, for example, it actually holds in place the exact same neural network as if you were performing the task, right? And so in my brain, I'm like, but hang on a minute, didn't I learn about this quantum Zeno effect? And didn't I learn about this thing called neuroplasticity, which is the way we reshape and reframe our brain? So why don't I just apply what I know? And how does this guy not know that? And so I was a bit mad. For about a month, I was kind of angry because I felt contained in this body that wasn't responding to what I could hear and sense in my mind. But after a month, I remember sitting outside and just surrendering, like I just surrendered. I let go. I just went, I give up. I thought I was giving up. And then all of a sudden, the most profound peace just enveloped me. And I opened my eyes and I was looking at the trees and the blades of grass as if for the first time. It was like, what? You've been here all the time and I'd never paid attention. And in that moment, I guess it was when I really understood what it was like to totally surrender and be mindful instead of mindful. And that's when my healing journey started. I just went, there's no point being mad. Let's just use what I know. So every day I'd rehearse in my mind how I was going to walk again, the words were going to come out of my mouth again. And slowly, it took 6 months, but I got there. And I still remember the day I walked into his office and he just looked at me and he just went, what have you been doing? And I rattled it off, you know, Reiki, homeopathy, blah, 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 blah. And he's just sitting there like I was speaking in Swahili. And he said, whatever it is, just keep doing it.
That is amazing. And this was after your second NDE, right? Because you had two. Yeah.
I had two. The NDEs were actually the first time I had cancer back in 1991. So in 1991, I was 24 years old. I was working in corporate. I was teaching aerobics part-time. So I was pretty fit, never drank, never smoked. And one day I just felt a little discomfort in my neck and thought that maybe I'd eaten something that hadn't quite been swallowed properly. And so I kept drinking lots and lots of water, but this little lump wouldn't go away. And so I ignored it for a while, went to the doctor and he poked around and said, look, I think it's glandular fever, but let's do an ultrasound just to be sure. Did the ultrasound and discovered there was in fact a tumor inside the right lobe of my thyroid. So he looked at me and he said, right, we need to take it out. He said, I won't bother with a biopsy. You're super fit, you're young, you're healthy, you'll be fine. Okay. So we booked in, had the surgery, and they only removed the right lobe of the thyroid, but very swiftly discovered that it was stage 3 malignant cancer. And so with that, the doctor looked at me and said, we need to do another surgery. When can we do it? And I said, and these words just came out, and maybe Michelle, you can help me, but these words just came out of my mouth before I had the opportunity to think. And the words were, if you don't do it first thing in the morning, I will never let you touch me again. So there was something intuitively that said, don't think about it, because if you have time to think, you're going to freak out, right? And the surgery was booked for 8 o'clock the following morning. And as a consequence of that, I was in ICU for a period of time. And in that time, I had lost so much blood. And that's when I actually flatlined twice. And each time, there was an aspect of my awareness that left my physical body and was floating up above me at the ceiling, looking down at my physical body. And I was aware that I was totally at peace. It was quite blissful. It was serene. And everything appeared to be quite light and bright and white. And I was floating there, quite happy, being aware that that was my physical body in the bed. But this was me up here as well at the same time. And I could see the nurses, reviving me, and I could see the flat line on the screen, but nothing, I had no reaction to any of it. I was in pure awareness and observation without any absorption of any of that I was witnessing. And while I was there blissfully observing, this really stern male voice came in from my left side and basically commanded, "It's not your time yet." And with that, I was straight back into my physical body and, kind of awoken for a little bit of time. I was in and out of consciousness for about 2 weeks. And then it happened again, and the exact same experience, the exact same voice telling me it wasn't my time yet. So that was my entree to this, I guess, the becoming a seeker, not understanding the reality that I'd been raised to believe and adopt. And all of a sudden having permission to ask these big questions, but more importantly, becoming the seeker of the answer rather than just taking on what everybody had told me to be truth.
Yeah, and I remember when when you were on Karn's show, and that's which is of course where we found you, and that being a pivotal, obviously. Near-death experiences are huge turning points for people, obviously, and I have so many questions around that because I want to ask. Well, when you came back, because we later found out, and I'll give a little giveaway, we later found out that that's Archangel Gabriel that was like, get back in your body. But we'll talk about that a little bit. You have the most beautiful smile, Josie, by the way. You just radiate. So when you got back into your body, because this began the process of you, after obviously you have to heal. That's step number one, is your recovery. And that gives you time to process and be like, what just happened? This is blowing my mind. And then, this is where you start to say, what's real in my life? What's not real? What if I thought was real? That really is just someone else's belief system that has nothing to do with me. And I'm wondering how that impacted you, as well as any abilities that you came back with, or if you came back with abilities, because that's so common for NDEs. It's like, once you pop out of your body that way, it's like, well, now you're psychic, whether you like it or not. So wondering what your experience like that was, what that was.
Well, I wasn't consciously aware of that, but I think it was a crack. It was like an opening in my consciousness that allowed some light to get in. And I was totally confused. I'd say that was probably, before that I'd been raised a Catholic. So I believed in God and I believed in my guardian angel. But all of a sudden there was some cognitive distortion going on, because the God that I'd been raised to know wouldn't have allowed this thing to happen to me. Or so I thought. And so that was when I started asking some different questions, and I wasn't happy with the answers that people were delivering me. And I ended up with more questions than answers. I wasn't aware that there was a psychic opening for me, but I think that was the beginning of me remembering that perhaps there was something in me, because as a child, I always felt the presence of energy, but always thought, I just said it was my guardian angel. And, you know, with my religious background, it kind of made sense. I've got a guardian angel, and I'd go to school and catch the tram, and I wouldn't let anyone sit beside me because that's where my guardian angel sat. and I would say that to people. I said, sorry, you can't sit there. My guardian angel's sitting there. And so you can imagine I got a bit of strange looks from that. But I really believed that as a child, you know, and then I kind of lost it. I think, you know, you get kind of caught up in the material world, and we weren't encouraged to be spiritual, we were encouraged to be religious. But all of a sudden, this was actually an awakening of some spiritual exploration for me. And that's when I went on this quest to buy all these books, and I still wasn't getting answers. And it took me a while. I think it was when I met another woman in Sydney who did an energy healing session with me prior to when I found out that I had the brain tumor. And she channeled, and she had very similar energy to you, Michelle. And it was a really profound experience for me, because I'd never been in the presence of someone who physically channeled voices that came through her, and her body shape and size would also adjust. And it was quite confronting and shocking and revealing for me. And in that session, she channeled 3 people, and she knew nothing of me, only my first name. And I'd never met her before. And the first person she channeled was an Asian medical entity that apparently had something to do with the introduction of the Reiki technology. And he was delivering information to me about the choices that I would be given in 2 days' time, that she did not know that my surgery was 2 days' time. And I wasn't allowed to take notes. So whatever I remembered, I could, you know, utilize. And that was interesting. It was an Asian voice. It was difficult to understand. And she had warned me that if at any point I freaked out, that I could say stop, and she would be in the room, but not in her body. I'd say, okay, right. I was open enough. I think when you're confronted with the prospect of a potential physical death, you kind of open up. Well, some people just fall in a heap and are totally consumed by fear, and they get paralyzed by that. Whereas others kind of go, well, I'm desperate. I'm willing to try something else, something new. So they start to open a little bit, and you only need that little bit of opening to start to expand your awareness and consciousness and light. And anyway, that was that one. And then she came back into body, and then this big male strong voice came out of her body, and I recognized the voice immediately, because it was that same voice that spoke to me in 1991, but I didn't know yet who this voice was. And she had said to me, if you want to ask a question, you can ask questions. So this voice started talking to me and said, in 2 days' time, you'll be given a choice, but you must decide. And I'm sitting there going, I don't understand. And so I said, I'm confused. What do you mean? And he said, in 2 days' time, you must decide whether you return home because you belong to my choir, or whether your journey begins in earnest, your work begins in earnest where you are. And I didn't understand where I would go or what I would choose. And he made the distinction between a choice and a decision, that a choice is something you don't commit to, but once you make a decision, you're in. And so I was like, and so even talking to you now about it, I can feel the hair on my body just standing up. And then I said to him, who are you? And he said, I am Archangel Gabriel. And my eyes just welled up, and it was like I'd heard truth. And he spoke straight to my heart. And I was like, okay, I got it. Thank you, you know. And if that wasn't enough, the next entity that came to visit me was a child, a cherub. And she spoke in a really childish voice. And she started trashing this woman's office. She was looking for something. She said, wait a minute, I've got something for you. And she went around and she was just pulling up papers and opening drawers. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get in trouble here. She's going to come back and blame me for this, you know. So she's pulling everything out. She goes, oh, I found it. She comes running back to me, sits there like a little kid, and she shows me this shell. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to a beach where you've picked up a shell that's multi-layered and it's sometimes chipped on the side and it's a little bit powdery. So she found me one of these shells that was in this woman's drawer somewhere. And she said, and she didn't know this, but at the same time of being diagnosed with my brain tumor, I had 3 separate lesions of bone cancer in my body, in my right hip, my right rib, and around the area of the tumor on my skull. And she said, see this shell? And I can go and get it, actually, it's in my bedroom. She said, your bone is like this, the powdery bit. She goes, your bone is like this, it's very sick, and we're going to make you all better. And I'm sitting there going, how does she know this, you know? And she said, when you go in for she couldn't say operation, she tried. She said, you tell the doctors to put in your hand and put your hand out like this and put the other hand out, and we're going to hold your hands. And I was just bawling my eyes out. And then she said to me, did you know why you like kids, like why you like babies? She said, you really like babies, don't you? I said, oh yes, I love them. She goes, you really, really love them, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. She said, do you know why? I said, no. And she said, because when you're up here, you're in charge of us and you make us very happy and we play with you all the time. And oh, my heart just exploded because it just made complete sense. If I could just live my lifetime playing with babies and children, I would be in pure joy every day. And I was like, okay, thank you for that. So it was a very profound experience, and trying to explain that to people who are not open, you know, not consciously awake to these dimensions. It's like you're on something, or you're losing it, or we understand you've got cancer, you know, there's something not quite right with you. But to those people that are awake, they get it. They really get it. And I'm moving more and more towards that tribe now, and daring to reshape, as we speak this week, my business, because I don't want to hide this stuff anymore.
That's awesome. You're one of us, 100%. I can just feel your heart opening up. That's so beautiful. With your smile, your heart's like radiating. All right, ladies, get in here and ask some questions. I don't want to be a guest hog. I have a hard time not being a guest hog.
I have, because I had my near-death experiences about the same age. Well, actually, I had a couple of different times it doesn't matter. When I was in the corporate world, though, I had a really difficult time relating afterwards. Did you find the same thing, that when you came back and you had those awarenesses that it was just things didn't fit right anymore?
I think others had more trouble relating to me than I did them, to be honest. When I went back to work, it's almost like I had a heightened sensitivity to other people's fear, not my own. I actually wasn't fearful of death. I mean, I just tasted it and it was kind of blissful. So I'm actually not fearful of death now. But when I went back to work, people knew that I had cancer. People knew I was going to have some kind of treatment. They couldn't avoid not seeing this most horrific, thick, knotted scarring that was every color you can imagine, black, purple, blue, red, that, you know, I couldn't hide, because if I put anything on it, it actually hurt. And so when they went to talk to me, they wouldn't actually talk to my eyes, they'd talk to my neck. And they'd say, oh, Josie, how are you today? And so what I would do is I'd bend down and go, I'm fine, you know, And so I'd try to bring some lightness to it, and that would freak them out even more, like thinking, well, why aren't you not okay? You know, this is really serious, because in those days, in 1991, you barely heard the word cancer being spoken about. Not many people had it. And so it had this automatic association to cancer equals death. Whereas for me, it was like, actually, this is before I learnt about neuroscience, but I chose to fight for life rather than fight against death. And that was a completely different battle. I'll call it a battle, but it wasn't. It was a quest. And I felt like totally willful and driven and forward facing. And I decided I wanted to take responsibility for that. And so that meant changing everything in my life. And I literally changed everything. I moved interstate. And that was because of the sun. I was at home after the surgery, and I was having radioactive iodine. And then the doctor said, look, we would like to do intravenous radiation treatment because it's proven to be effective for this kind of cancer. Because I disturbed it with the first surgery, it had spread to my sternum and my lungs. So they needed to give me a really big hit. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I trusted these supposed experts. And they said, okay, so what it means is we will deliver radiation intravenously, and then you need to sit in a radiation ward in your own room, in a lead light room, for 1 week. And you're not to have visitors. You can't have any electronics in the room. And I went, okay, I didn't know what to expect, you know. And so I was put into this small lead line room that had fluorescent lights just at the bottom of the room. There was no technology. So this was before mobile phones. There was no television. There was no radio. There was nothing in there. And food was literally just pushed through a slot on the floor under the door. And all of my waste had to remain in the room with me because it was radioactive. And there was the big, you know, skull and bones, the do not enter all over the place outside. And once a day, I had one attendant that would come and visit me just to check my vitals. And that was it. So it was a frightening experience. And I prayed every day, and I cried an ocean. But in that time, it's kind of like the Vipassana meditation. You've just got this silence. There's nothing else to do. You just kind of have this inner battle, and then you surrender in the quiet and stillness, and there's no war anymore, you know. And I just trusted that my body was doing what it needed to do to heal, because that's what I wanted. That's what I commanded. And at this stage, I hadn't had awareness of connection with, you know, the archangels and my spiritual tribe. But I believed in so this is where I guess my Catholicism did help me, because I did believe in my guardian angel. And I didn't know what that voice was before, but I just believed that I was going to be okay. So I did change, and I found that I became a lot more sensitive to people's energy, and that I could sense immediately if someone was frightened. And I would very gently call it out, and I could just bring peace to the moment for them. And so now I'm very sensitive, like even going to spaces, you know, raising my children, they were never allowed to watch horror or violent films or have any of those games in my home. And, you know, we always had kind of mantra or soft music in the background. They didn't know what I was playing, but it really settled them down. And it's just whenever anyone walks into my home, they just take this beautiful inhalation and they go, oh, I just feel so peaceful here, you know, and that's intentional. So I'm very mindful of the people I let in my own energy field, and I avoid spaces and people that don't feel good. So I'm a bit more sensitive to that now.
Hop in, Michelle. Thank you.
Well, I'm just absolutely fascinated by this story and very, very moved when you were talking about hearing the voice. I just felt this massive presence just start expanding around. And I was kind of watching Kat. It's like, are you feeling it too? And it was Archangel Gabriel. It was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. And when you said Archangel Gabriel, it was just like this. Of course.
Yeah.
What a beautiful experience. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm getting interested in how all this translated into helping people in the corporate too, because it's so needed. It's so needed.
Well, I'll be curious to hear how Linda does it. For me, it's very covert. Like it is my secret weapon. Like I'll go in there with the neuroscience, very head driven, very head focused, because this is the world that they're operating in. And this is the world that they have to have credibility in and they have to deliver upon. However, what I encourage people to do is to really bridge the head and the heart. But I don't talk about that when I'm placed in front of them, because when I did, so after the second experience with the brain tumor, and I was basically in silence for 6 months, and I couldn't walk or talk or work in that time. And it got to a point where I came out of that and I wanted to save the world. So I changed my brand to Josephine, and it was very etheric and it was all purple and beautiful and floaty. And I put it out there and I went, right, let's do this, everyone. And remember, my audience was primarily corporate and they all ran away. Totally. They didn't want a bar of it. They were like, whoa, she's weird now. Like, what's she on? It's not what I want. It's not the right language. We can't relate. And so after about really pushing this and trying this for about 6 months, I couldn't pay my mortgage. And I remember I went outside and I fell to my knees on the grass and I raised my hands in the air and I said, am I not doing what you want me to do? And then this voice came to me and said, remember who you are. And then I looked up in the middle of my tears and I'm like, and what the hell does that mean? And the voice just kept saying, remember who you are. And then I just bowed my head and just let myself absorb those words, not totally understanding it yet. Then I went inside and I wrote one email to 12 previous coaching clients saying, I've decided to offer 10 spaces to work with me next year. And these are the things that we're going to work on. If you're interested, get in early because these spots are going to fill up. And with less than 24 hours, those 10 spots were filled. And it was like, Josie, don't abandon what you're doing and how you're doing it. Just seed it in. Just seed it in when it's appropriate. You know, when people are ready, because they crave the conversation, they just don't dare to say it out loud and they don't know where to go to have the conversation and they feel very vulnerable until you've actually got that trust and rapport built. And I have that in a fierce way with every person I've ever worked with. They know they're held, they know they're safe, they know they're loved and supported unconditionally. So by the time we meet for the third or fourth time, we're having these conversations out loud and they love it, you know, and they're like, I can't believe we're talking about this stuff. You know, I'm saying things to you that I've never told anyone before, but I'm feeling like I need greater truth and integrity and alignment in my life. And these are the conversations that we need to have. So that's one way I do it on a one-on-one basis. But then in 2008, I had a chance meeting at the very first 2008 or 2006 one, very first NeuroLeadership summit in Eye Salon in Italy. And it was just a room for about 100 people. There were a mix of corporates, but predominantly neuroscientists there. And they were looking at the application of neuroscience in the field of leadership. So this was the very first one. And it was just so exciting, cutting edge. And something drew me to go because this was my market. I didn't know a thing about neuroscience. But something was piquing my interest. So I went along and I met all these incredible brainiacs from around the world. And they were talking about this thing called neuroscience and how it could be applied to leadership. And I thought, I'm interested in this, not just from a corporate perspective, but also for us as individual leaders of our own lives. So that was really what I wanted to look at. And I met a scientist by the name of Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, and he's the leading neuroscientist in the world on OCD and also mindfulness. And then I met the MC, who was Art Kleiner, who at the time was the editor-in-chief for Strategy and Business magazine. And so one was in New York, one was in LA, and here I was in Brisbane, Australia. And so we just started having these monthly, bi-monthly conversations. And then we had this idea, why don't we create a book that brings neuroscience right into the realm of leadership, but Art brings in the management consulting experience and all the stories from all these incredible leaders from around the world. And I bring in coaching case studies because I was actually applying neuroscience in my coaching practice with my clients. And so it took us 8 years to write the book. And we had Columbia University Business School publish the book. And it's called The Wise Advocate. And the tagline is the inner voice of strategic leadership. So if you want to know how I bring this out to corporate in a very scientific, head-based way, which is actually more profound, that's how we did it. And so in certain circles, I only talk neuroscience and they get it and they become aware of this inner voice, right? That informs conscious strategic decisions that are in the best interest for the highest good in the long run. And that's what these leaders in corporates are paid to do. But the everyday person wants to connect with that inner voice of leadership of their life, right? So it's very, the first 2 chapters is pretty heavy into the neuroscience. So that those people who need the science and the validity of everything we talk about, it's there without any doubt. But then we get into challenging people's thinking paradigms, because in the world of neuroscience, they're not as open-minded about the constructs of, say, for example, and I'll say this to you because I know you'll get this, the distinction between the mind and the brain. And there's a massive, massive distinction, but there's huge controversy within the ranks of neuroscience around that, because you can't quantify the mind. It's like it's a function of the brain. Well, actually, really? And so in this book, we dare to kind of question that and put our views forward. So depending on the circles that I'm speaking within, I will share more about that voice that's appropriate to that context. So, last week I spoke at the Theosophical Society, and so I could talk very openly about my own personal views about that voice. And someone in the audience, put their hand up. And these are very, they're into conscious wisdom. They're very much into esoteric, channeling. And they said, so who is the voice? What is that voice? And I just looked at him and I looked at the room, and a pen, you could drop a pin and you would have heard it. I said, it's God. And they're like, she said it out loud, really? And I'm like, yeah, you call it what you want, whatever the God of your heart is, you call it that. I'm just going to call it God. And it was like fantastic. This major relief for people in the room to just call it out and not be worried about what others would think or.
Well, so. It's like you pop the bubble for them, so they didn't have to be the ones to do it. Like you being a leader, you are a leader. Like you made it okay for people to use the G word.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Josie, what is the name of that book again?
Oh, let me get it. It's called The Wise Advocate. I'll show it for you. Hang on.
Yeah.
The Wise.
Oh, good. And I'll drop it in the chat.
Love that. Oh, there you
I
go.
know, the tagline is so good. The inner voice of strategic leadership. Now that is good marketing, my friends. I'll drop that right in here. Boop.
I've always been so fascinated with the mind. And I started out studying psychology, and I decided the professors were nuts and I was not doing that. And so I'm all nerding out on this entire thing. I'm getting that book.
Yeah.
So Josie, hold it up and talk at the same time so people can see it.
So it's called The Wise Advocate. The tagline is the inner voice of strategic leadership. And so, the first 2 chapters are pretty heavy going with the science. But then after that, we're going to loads of practical application and case studies of people that are known for actually leading in a more conscious way. And I think, what I found, and I'll be curious to hear Linda's experience in this, that a lot of my corporate clients are C-suite. They're, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and they're craving conversations where they're seeking more purpose and meaning in what they're doing. And this is the world in which, I think we have great resource in offering people to expand their awareness. And mindfulness is now, a real buzzword out there. And, there's mindfulness and there's mindfulness, right? So when you're practicing the true sense of mindfulness, it's all about building that capacity for, disciplining the brain first to expand your sense of awareness. So it's not just this, non-judgmental present moment connection. It's actually about stepping into that realm of expanded, what we call meta awareness in the book, where you become aware of how you're being aware. And that's where the magic happens, as you all know.
That is gorgeous.
Okay.
Aware. Oh, go ahead, Linda, hop in. Yes.
Yeah. And so I stepped pretty much out of the corporate world at one point. I followed my guidance when I was wanting to leave the corporate and did everything I was supposed to do from what I was being led to do, and it imploded. And so I was like you at that moment of, I did what you said. What am I supposed to do, right? And what through lots of self-reflection and lots of trying different things, trying to find my way, my clients for my very boring business consulting that I did a lot around merchant services said, that's great, but you do this thing when you talk to me where you kind of look through me and it's really disconcerting, but then you say something that just rocks my world. Whatever you do there, that's what you should be doing. And I didn't even know I was doing that. I was not aware I was looking through people and saying something. And so for me, it kind of slid in there in the back that I had to confront it. And Kat's the one that actually pulled me out of that closet of hiding.
Closet.
The psychic closet. He pulled me out of the psychic closet. It only took him 10 years to do that. So
she's the accidental psychic business coach.
I am. And I've chosen to work with people who are doing their own business, new businesses that are wanting to step away from the previous life that they had because they want something more enriching. And maybe they don't know what it is. Maybe they do. But it's my tag is everyone has a mission in life, and mine's to help you fulfill yours. And so for me, it's really being there to help overcome the obstacles but also figure out what that is that they want to do and help lead that, through their own journey. So that's how I do it. Would I go back to corporate? I think I would, but I would do it more like you're doing it, where it would be a little more disguised. The wording would change, but the intent would be the same.
Yes.
Ms. Jillian, do you have a question or some reflection for our lovely Josie?
Honestly, I've just been soaking this all up. I mean, I love listening to what Josie's saying. I just want to say it's so admirable to me that you are a single mother. I'm a single mother. You're following your path. You're following your mission. And I just love seeing that with other people. And it inspires me to do the same myself with my passions, and not so much questions that I have, but I just wanted you to know that, like, I'm really enjoying learning about all of this.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. It's not, as you know, it's not easy, because you are like a maverick. You're forging a path that requires courage. But I remember one of my teachers once said to me, you don't learn courage until you're in a situation that calls for courage, and when my second marriage broke down, my kids were only 6 and 8. And I remember during that time, I had no access to money. I was isolated. I felt ashamed. I felt like a failure. And I had these 2 beautiful little kids totally dependent on me. And I had limited capacity to work because my mental health was like really fragile at that stage.
Oh, for sure.
And there was an evening where I faced the dark night. And I remember I tucked the kids to sleep, and I had this very dark thought that I just couldn't cope. It was just too much for me. And so I went to say goodbye to my children. So I kissed my daughter on her forehead and said goodnight. And then I went to kiss my son on his forehead to say goodbye. And he opened up his big brown eyes and he looked at me with the most beautiful big smile and he said, I love you, Mummy. And in that moment, it seriously just snapped me out of my daze.
Right.
And my whole body just shook, and I crawled into bed with him and I held him so tight. And I was saying to myself, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't do this to you, to my son.
Right.
Thinking, I can't do this to them. How selfish. No, you're not doing that. And that was actually another significant breakthrough for me, because it gave me much greater empathy and compassion for people who are faced with that situation. And I spoke at a suicide prevention function not long after that. And I looked at everyone in the room who had been touched by suicide. And I just went, I'm just going to do this. So I shared my story. And I said, put your hand up if you have never had that thought. And not one hand went up. And I could see that, but no one else could see it because they were just frozen in place, right? And then I said, so take a look around the room. And they just very slowly looked around and were like, oh, it's not just me. And then they looked the other way. It was like, everyone's just like me. Like every single person in that room had had the thought. And then I was doing the science of it because I was talking from brain science of it. And I said, here's the thing. Every single one of us has had that thought. But every single one of us made a brave decision. And that was to not do it. So not only do we have free will, we have this construct that's also validated in neuroscience called free won't. And you can only employ that when you're being mindful, when you become consciously aware of what you're focusing your attention on. And in that moment, you have this moment of choice where you can go, I could just satisfy that urge, that craving, that compulsion to take me out of my pain, or I could do something different. And that is really, it is a very brave moment. And it's one that if you're in a really irrational space in time, it's completely irrational when people make that choice, you know, to end the suffering. It's totally irrational. But in that instant where you go, I could do that, but I'm not going to. And there's even more fear that comes up because you go, what the hell am I going to do now? How am I going to do this? And that's when you have to really go, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. You know, and that's when all of a sudden you can actually open up to, all right, I don't know how to do this. Can you please help me? And you don't even have to know who you're talking to. You don't have to name them. I used to get caught up with that. Like, you know, I think I'm in the room with the most incredible, you know, psychic, talented people. And I don't consider myself psychic. Like, I don't see my archangels. I don't see the people that are helping me like other people see. But I've realized I don't have to see them. I just need to tap in and go, I'm being guided. I don't need form. I don't need names. I just need to know it's of the light and it's here for the greatest good. Like, stop over analyzing it. Stop willing it to be something it's not for me. Everyone has their own unique gifts and their own unique ways of tapping in. And you just got to trust it. And that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. That I'm like, okay, I don't need to take form. I don't need to see a face and a human body because that's my human expectation. That's not how they show up, you know? So I think just like your experience, Linda, when I go into a coaching session, I'm not aware that I'm actually channeling, but in reflection, after a session, I sit there and go, wow, that was amazing. You know, how did that even happen? And one of the most profound presentations I ever gave was when I was given this by the Dalai Lama, right? I was speaking at the largest happiness conference in the Eastern Hemisphere, nor Southern Hemisphere. And the Dalai Lama spoke before me. And I was like, how am I possibly going to match that? And I'm on the sidelines waiting to be introduced, and my whole body was like this, you know, like full of adrenaline, right? And I just shook it all out, and then I just threw my arms in the air and I said, you know, do your thing. Let me just be a channel for your wisdom for these people in the room, and just let it go. Just let it go. And I was completely blank in my head going, oh my God, what's going to happen here? So I walk out onto stage, and the first thing I did is I start waving at everyone. And I've got this big smile on my face. I'm like, hi, trying to get this energy out of my body. And then all of a sudden, I just shifted into gear. And I just did this presentation. And when I walked off, I was like, what did I even say? I had no recollection of what I had said. And then when I was signing books afterwards, you know, people saying, oh, I love what you said about this and this. And I'm just looking at them going, okay, I'm glad you loved it. I do remember it. And that happens in coaching sessions, Linda. That might happen with you, where people say, can you just repeat that? And I'm like, I can't.
No, I record my coaching sessions.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I don't remember most of the time what's said. And so they're always available for my clients to go back and look. And so it's really interesting because they'll say, remember you said this, like you brought this up like 6 months ago, and it's just now coming in my head. It's like, I don't remember a thing. But I realized it used to bug me, but I realized I'm not meant to remember it. It's not mine. It's theirs.
Yeah.
And so I tend not to remember those things that I've said. But I actually was brought to tears by someone that called me out of the blue. It's still a client of mine from my merchant service days. And he called me up just to tell me, you know, I was thinking about how you just showed up one day when I needed someone. And you just showed up and said you were here. And how much that changed my life.
Wow.
I hadn't thought about that. It was a day, but I just had this calling that I needed to be there. And I would love a world where our people who are in business are more receptive to following the guidance, and that build a business based on those principles of really being open to the guidance that's given to everyone. It's just verbiage, feel it in your gut.
Yeah. I'm also passionate about making sure that children don't lose that connection, because they're born with it, and then for some reason they're trained out of it because of judgments and comparisons and things that we say as adults. And so as a parent, I've been very mindful of the fact that I was brought up learning religion at school. It was part of the curriculum. Now there is no religious education in the curriculum, and I think that's really sad. I think it's really sad, because I have conversations with my children who don't believe in God, and I'm like, how did I raise children that don't believe in God? And we have these really wonderful conversations, and I'm like, you know what? You may not believe in a God right now, but one day something might happen where you'll start to ask the question that everything you think just won't make sense. And then you'll start expanding your inquiry around how things work and how things happen. And you might change your mind in relation to that. So just leave a space open for that. Because your scientific explanations won't always cut it. I said that just be open to that. So,
my sisters were raised in Catholic schools, and I was not. But my mother would allow anyone that wanted to come in who was brave enough to enter her home to try to convert her. And all she did was ask questions. I was amazed how much knowledge my mom had, never seen her with any kind of a religious book, but she knew them inside and out. And so she would ask a lot of questions. And for me, that was one of the best gifts that she gave me, was the willingness to ask those questions. And be curious about it. And she would always leave them in the end, usually clawing their way out the door with the parting thoughts that if you're going to try to convert someone, you ought to understand why you believe what you believe. And it was just really powerful for me to really think about that, and understand that sometimes we're indoctrinated into beliefs without understanding what they are. And this is a way for us to reevaluate. I think we are a society now, we're reevaluating a lot of our predetermined beliefs in all areas. So I think that I wouldn't worry too much about your children.
No.
I'm a very scientific, my brain goes there. I get all, that's where I get all gooey and start looking at things. And so I geek out as well, Michelle. So, but the more scientific I get, the more I believe in God.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is a t-shirt right there. That's great. Well, I wanted to ask you what your evolution is that you're in now, but then also before we get into that, how are you in Australia right now? Talking about Linda saying all the changes are going on in the world, and I know that Australia has just been going through so much turmoil in claiming sovereignty, and just people drawing boundaries and all that stuff. And I'm wondering how you are faring on all of that, and what's your take on all of that right now?
Yeah. Well, states are not playing nicely. There's kind of like this grab for power, and there seems to be voices now starting to become louder from the people, starting to challenge the system. And so, Melbourne, for example, has been in lockdown for some ridiculous amount of time. It's like 18 months. Most of those small businesses will never recover, will never reopen. And that's just been horrific to witness. The suicide rates have gone through the roof, and they're not reporting those. And that's just been quite, even in the medical fields, because I will speak freely here. Some of our medical system is being compromised, I believe, to behave in ways that are not necessarily in integrity with the oath that they took. And so, there are a lot of people that are being challenged by what they're being asked to do or told to do now. And so I'm going through another health situation. And so I reached out to a plant medicine doctor who has resigned his position with the hospital because he was being asked to treat patients in a particular way that he was totally against his own beliefs and practices. And he said, no, I quit. So, and there's a lot of people leaving, not just medicine, but police and all sorts of things, because they've been told if they want to keep working there, they've got to be double vaccinated and all the rest of it. And they're like, no. And so there is a big push. There's a lot of fear mongering. And so people are being vaccinated because they think they're going to have their freedoms restored. But then there's another big group of people saying, well, actually, no, we fundamentally disagree with this. Give us the proof that they actually work. There seems to be a lot more injury from them than you're reporting. And our medical system is being silenced from talking and reporting on those facts. So, the country's divided at the moment. I live in Queensland. We have the lowest vaccination rate up here. We also have the lowest COVID incidences up here. They call us the sunshine state. We literally have the sun almost every single day of the year. And my belief is that the sun is extremely healing. And I moved to Brisbane because of the sun. So when I was in the middle of my cancer treatment the first time and offered a job up here, I came up, I was really unwell. I left Melbourne, it was raining, terribly cold. And I landed in Brisbane, only 2-hour flight away, and it was blue skies and sunshine. And I remember standing on the tarmac, lifting the sleeves on my suit and just feeling the warmth and the light of the sun. And I felt really well. Had the interview. They basically offered me the job on the spot. And then I had this battle. My head was going, don't be silly. You need the support of your family. You're going through this cancer thing. And my heart just went, go. And I went. And I've really never looked back in terms of my life and my own evolution, and literally sitting in the sun every day for, between 5 and 10 minutes and, feeling the healing properties of the sun and the effect on mood. You'll find that people up here generally are happier and they smile more and they'll say good day if they see you in the street. Whereas that's not always the practice in the southern states. So, yeah. So it's different for every state. So there's still a lot of lockdowns. We don't have freedom to move between the states of Australia. We've only been told we can play in our own backyards. My whole family, my birth family, is all in Melbourne, and they've been suffering terribly during this time. And, I've been very worried about their mental health and, relatives going to hospital with different conditions, not being able to have any visitors, no, emotional support. It's just cruel, really cruel.
Yeah. I would have to agree. Yeah, it's very anti-intuitive, the approaches when people aren't, the things that heal you are sunshine and connection. And those are the things being stripped away. But so my heart goes out to all of you. I just feel like we need to have a sort of fun that's like, let's have care packages that we send to our Australian friends and buddies, so we can just be like, we love you, we understand what we're going through, what you're going through. I mean, we understand a bit of it. We all experience some lockdown, but not the way that you guys have experienced it. So maybe even though we can't understand it, we're thinking about you, we love you, here's a care package, and like just put it full of goodies so that you guys know that you're being thought of and that you're in the hearts of other people, and you know that we're with you and with that struggle and with overcoming it and reclaiming sovereignty. And it's what the challenge is. It's like, be sovereign or not. Like, that's how I see it, at least from my vantage point.
Well, I'd love to ask Michelle to pray, to set yeah.
Let's do that. Michelle, would you pray for our Australian? I was gonna make me cry. I'm gonna kind of mute myself.
Absolutely, and it's gonna make me cry too. So on the count of 3, let's all cry. That will be our prayer. We just call upon all of creation, all of light, all of love. We call upon the hearts of all of life. And sacred and holy ones, we ask that the light of truth, that the love of truth pour down on Australia, the entire continent of Australia. And beloveds, we even extend that more to all of life on this beautiful, beautiful planet, Mother Earth. Holy ones, we ask for the love that is innate within all of light begin to expand, begin to grow within the hearts and mind of all of our Australian brothers and sisters. We ask that leadership be awakened. We call upon the power of truth, love, and light to reawaken in all of mankind and within all of life. Let life return to this planet. And sacred and holy ones, we know that in this oneness, that we are one with the angels and archangels and masters and holy ones who are here to help us, who dwell within each and every one of us. And we ask that the voices of the good become louder, that the power of truth becomes stronger. We ask that the resolve of our Australian brothers and sisters remain strong, so that as we all go through this, that we all greet each other on the other side. Holy ones, we must remember this is temporary and that we do have so much spiritual help. And so we call upon that spiritual help, and not only call upon, but we command that spiritual help that wells up from within each and every one of us to begin to arise and to begin to demonstrate out in the world, so that we all awaken to who we truly are. We are the gods and goddesses. We are the creators. We are the light. We are the life. We are the truth. And it is us, each and every one of us, individuals, who will change this thing, who will turn this thing around. Light always has more power. Love rules all things. And in that faith, we can shift the tides. And so I call upon that within each and every one of us, within all that is around us. And sacred ones, bless all of life in Australia. Bless all of life in Australia. Help those who are in darkness. Help those that are in leadership that are being misled, who are in darkness. Help those who work in the deep, deep places of deceit and manipulation. Holy ones, bless them with light and love. Awaken them to who they are. And we know that when we ask these things, the word has been said, as you ask, so you shall receive. We know in faith in that promise, that we are asking that right now, for love and light to well up within everything that contains light, the light and the dark, that the truth of who each and every being is, knowing we ask this because we know all things come from the light, all things comes from love. everything was created in that light, in that breath of God. So, Holy Ones, we call upon that within each and every one. Within each and every one, that light and that love, that it expand and awaken with power, grace, peace, harmony. And we ask for it now in the name of all that is sacred and holy, all that is love and light. And I will add, and in the name of the Christ, we know it's asked and we know it is done. And we just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen, amen, and amen.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Mm,
Thank you.
wow.
Dab my eyes so I'll be able to talk in a second.
I didn't have tissues available for all of you. Mm,
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you.
mm.
All the love to Australia and to everyone who's going through hardness right now.
Absolutely. And one thing that I keep getting, because I work as a psychic and intuitive. I do coaching like you ladies do, but it's it's more I deal with the spiritual thing, and I just keep getting that we have to remember that this is temporary too, that this is part of our spiritual growth. This is part of it, that resisting it makes it harder. And surrendering, and Josie, you keep saying surrender, surrender, surrender is where you found your strength. And to surrender into the experience, not surrender to the, but surrender to the truth and the light into this experience, and have faith that this is all part of it. And understanding that, we're not doing this alone, that we have help with each other. We're all connecting, like this beautiful group right here. Any one of us, if any of you are feeling, sad or scared or whatever, text me, contact me, email me. I'm here to help you. It's part of the reason I'm here at this time. I chose to be here, and I know all these beautiful people too. But we have to remember it's temporary. It's part of the plan. It's part of the divine plan. And it's really cool because I have a lot of people contact me and make appointments, and they're like, so when is this over? You're psychic. When is this over? And I just keep seeing, like the middle of next year. And then I just see like, whoosh. I'm thinking something's coming up. Something's coming up, that this is all going to open up. And when I said that prayer, as those words were coming out, and I could feel the archangel speaking through me, I could see the light returning, and I could see the light returning to the darkness. It's almost like there's like this foundational layer of darkness, and I could see the light like in there. It's happening. We might not see it yet. Oh, but it's happening. The light is winning and love is winning. So let's all hold that and hold that for each other. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And Josie, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Your story is so beautiful.
You reminded me of something else, Michelle. Thank you for that. When when I was in ICU the first time, my parents arranged for the Catholic priest to come and give me my final rites in the hospital. And I remember kind of opening my eyes, and I had all this holy water being splashed all over me. And I remember saying to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm giving you your final rites." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're dying." And I looked at him and I went, "So are you." And then I was out again. And it was only last year, actually. This is so many years on. It was 91. So last year was nearly 30 years, right? I found this Jesuit priest in a retirement home. I rang everywhere because I wanted to talk to him, because I was still angry. I was angry that he gave me my final rites. And I felt like he was giving up on me. And I rang him up and I thought, well, he would be in his 90s now. He probably wouldn't even remember me. He'd probably be dead. So anyway, I found him. He's very much alive. He's 92 and he did remember me. And I said, hi, Father, it's Josie. And I said, do you remember when you gave me my final rites? He said, yes, of course I do, child. And I said, well, I was really angry at you for doing that. And he said, why? And I said, well, because I felt like you had given me up, you'd just given up on me and you're just saying you're going to die. So here you are. He goes, no. He said, we weren't handing you over to God. We were handing your cancer over to God. And just that clarification, like in an instant, the anger, the resentment just completely left me. And I was speechless. And I went, oh. And he said, it clearly worked, didn't it? He hadn't lost his sense of humor. And I said, all these years I've been carrying this resentment towards you. And I said, and it was wrong. I didn't realize it was my cancer that you're actually handing over. And then I just ended up saying, thank you, God bless you. And I just felt this enormous relief. And then I rang my parents who had organized it. And I told them the story that I'd actually contacted him, found him, and had this healing in a moment. And they were like, wow, they just couldn't believe it. So that's something that's with me now.
They should make that a little bit clearer when they come in. They should probably let you know these things.
Well, I was mad because then no one asked me if I wanted it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think they just all took charge because they were so fearful that I was told I had 6 months to live. So, I was told that I was dying, but every cell in my body didn't believe it. I remember looking at the doctor saying, well, how do you know that for sure? So I wasn't satisfied with the answer that he gave me. And I thought, well, I'll do it my way. Everybody else was busy believing I was going to die and I was busy getting on with it. So that's why I really had to find my own space that enabled me to do things my way. I wasn't going to be able to do that back in Melbourne with my family around me. The load was too big.
You're such a fighter. You're so passionate and sassy. Like, I like that you just throw things back at people. You're like, well, that's yours, not mine. Like you just have that within you. You didn't let it glom onto you and then like shape your experience. You were just full stop, not mine, not owning it.
There was a big shift required because, I've been brought up as part of a very close Italian family, and being the eldest daughter, there's a lot of duty and obligation involved as the eldest daughter. And so there was this disentanglement that had to happen for me. And there was a lot of disapproval that I was met with at the same time. So whilst I was doing the right thing for me, I was not necessarily doing the right thing by my family. And that's when I sort of had to make that delineation around, this is my responsibility. That is not my responsibility. And so are they going to be disappointed with me? Yeah, probably. Actually, yes, they are. Are they going to be upset and angry with me? Yes, they are. But that's not my load. Here I am. And I've had this conversation with my parents since, where they saw me running away. They didn't see me running toward my health and well-being. They only saw it from their vantage point. So having that conversation with them, even now, they'll say, when are you coming home? You're not sick anymore. And I'm like, I am home and I'm happy. And is that not what you want from me?
God, that's so powerful.
Every parent wants that for their child, but I think it was Khalil Gibran who said that, our kids are on loan. We don't own them.
Yeah, there's a beautiful song, children come through us, but they are not ours. Something along those lines, like they come through us, but they are not ours. And that's a point of liberation, where they shouldn't have to carry my unfulfilled dreams should not fall upon the shoulders of my children for them to, fulfill on my behalf. Like, no, God, no. Every soul comes in with its own mission. Let's just respect that,
But that's a tough lesson. I love to hear how Jillian does it, because my son is a crack up. He's now 21 and he's a beautiful human being. And I'll often say, hey, I'm going off to satsang tonight to meditate and chant. I said, do you want to come with me? And he'll just look at me and he'll go, Mum, you do you and I'll do me. And I just love that. I'm like, thank you for reminding me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, with me, with my kids, like my daughter is very, very open. My son is 2 and my daughter is 7. So she is at the point right now where she's becoming interested in the things that I'm doing, like meditating. And, I'm open about spirit and ETs with her, but not enough to freak her out, just enough to kind of plant those little seeds. And I find she's really, really following it. And I'm so blessed, honestly, to have a daughter like that. My son, I feel like he was born very open, like where she is just kind of coming into her own now. Like, I feel like my son was born very open. I have incidents with him where his father passed away when I was 6 months pregnant. So after he started to, be able to see around and develop his own little personality, I catch him all the time just looking up at nothing and laughing. So this is where I'm seeing that thread of, and I mean, I've got my own thing where I can tell when spirit's around and this and that. And it's usually when I'm picking up on him as well. And it's just, like I have it pretty good with them. But I mean, I would never push my stuff onto them. If they were, if they came to me and said, oh, you go meditate and I'm just gonna brush that off. I don't want anything to do with it. That's fine. That would be their, I want them to develop their own belief systems as well. But I've just, like I said, I've been very blessed, I feel, to have, my daughter coming into this, and
Nice. Yeah, I know that kids can be a challenge all the way through. And speaking as a single gay man, I can't speak to that a whole lot other than watching my friends. And all you can do is love the bejesus out of them, and the rest of it's up to them. You can't save them. You can't shape them. You can, just give them options to find their own best self. I wanted to ask you then, Ms. Josie, so what do you feel like your work is expanding into now? What do you feel like, because you said at the beginning of the show that it's shifting because you're going to be becoming more embracing the woo-woo because it's true, like Jimmy Butler says.
Well, and this is where I've got to make some decisions this week.
Oh, this week?
This week,
wow.
Because I've committed to revamping my website, and I thought, well, I think I need to just put everything I've done to one side and ask my heart how she wants to show up now. Wow. So what I'm coming up with, it's a lot more around healing. I do a fair bit of teaching, but not overtly, around embracing a more embodied experience of life. So I'm still formulating what it's going to look like, but I know that I don't want to deny it anymore. I don't want to hide it anymore. So it is a secret weapon that doesn't need to be so secret. But maybe the people that I work with need to still keep it concealed, but why not enable them to connect with it anyway and resource themselves to then utilize it as they will, as it's appropriate for them.
Well, I think it's timely. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I need to lead the way. I need to actually walk the talk. I can't expect them to do it if I'm not willing to do it. And there's a lot of risk associated with it.
God, you nailed it.
That's the world I've been known in, and that's the world I know. Whereas it's like, I've got to trust. And if I expect my clients to do it, well, then I need to do it.
Yeah, I that's what I've been getting as well, where it's like it's time for those of us who are awakened to assume our leadership role to the full extent and to own all of our space and to no longer compromise pockets of it because the time is now. Like it's time. We've just gone through this, and are still going through this huge shift in consciousness and awakening. And oppression causes a pressure, and that pressure has a response, and the response is to burst out and be bigger and stronger and more glorious and gorgeous than you were before. And I think heralding the way for those people, saying, because you already have a reputation, it's not like you're a beginner at this point. Like, you have awards, you have acknowledgement, you have this history. And for them to watch you step all the way out into the light and embrace it and become glorious in that, what a load of bricks off their shoulders. They can see a way shower who's doing it, and who's doing it with authority and grace and humor. It's a gift. It's timely.
So what's this space?
This space, well, I think the space is that people are going to have, I think there's been a lot of awakenings happening over the last few years. People are having, like Jillian, spontaneous Kundalini awakening. They've had all of a sudden people become psychic. They, NDEs. There's a myriad of different ways where it's like their contract allowed them to wake up at a certain time during this juncture, and the energy is intensifying on the planet. And there are some people who are embracing it. There are some people who are freaking out, and there are a lot of closet spiritual people. And we are at a place where we just need to wake up and be awake together. We need community of the heart, not the community of the mind. The community of the mind is what we've had for a long time. Oh, we all believe this. Oh, we're all, and we all cluster in our political belief systems and our religious belief systems. And that's not the connection of the heart. That's the connection of our belief systems and of the brain. And it's time now for the heart, like you're saying, to lead the way. I'm going to listen to my heart. What does she have to say? And I think that is the calling that I see that in my circle of friends, where everyone's being summoned to be bigger because there's more work to do. Things are going to get more intense, and things are going to get more in your face. And the only way to get over that is to go through it. And the only way to go through it is to be conscious and to be awake and to be in charge of your decisions and your clarity. That's my truth around that. And I asked the panel to hop in and say if you agree with that or what you see as well.
For me, before COVID, I know I've mentioned it, that I saw waves of something covering the earth 3 times. And I didn't know if it was an energetic wave. I didn't know what it was. And I asked what this was. I saw the earth, and then I saw a dog shaking off water. And I always thought it was, fleas, we're like fleas to the earth and it's cleansing, right? But I just heard shake it up. That it's shaking it up. And I also got really clearly the 3 waves. That shakeup is, the first wave is the fear and shaking everyone up with the fear. The second is the rebellion, but the third is the communion. And the third is pulling, through this, whether you've been poked or not, whether you believe this side or that side, beyond all of those things, we're divine beings.
Yes.
And to be able to look at each other in that realm and to choose how we're going to have our existence personally in that realm. Am I going to choose anger, bitterness, talking bad about people? Or am I going to choose looking at the negatives in my life? Or am I going to choose to seek out love, and for myself, for my people around me, for my enemy, who is just another aspect of me? And so that divide that we're feeling so strongly, it's that pendulum has to come back. We pulled apart, but that third wave looking beyond and us realizing this is not comfortable. This is not where we're supposed to be. And bringing us back into a wholeness of seeing the divinity in each other. And the other part, I think, is that choice. And this morning, I was with our neighbor that is 94 years old, and she asked me, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? And she's 94, and I said, well, I guess you have a choice. You can choose to look at all the things that are wrong at 94, or you can choose to appreciate everything that's right. And she got a little choky, a little teary-eyed. Just I never thought of that. Because it's kind of every time I go over there, she's complaining about something. And, the next ache and pain, and she said, I do have a lot that's going right. And I said, you can choose to live. She goes, well, first she said, I'm kind of just waiting to die. And I said, or you could choose to live. With whatever you have in whatever way you can for what's left, and however that looks. And it may be all an inside game at that point, but it's finding those appreciation with every moment, the micro moments of appreciation. And I think that will bring us more together. And it's in that observation of those moments, in the divinity of life.
Beautiful. All right. Well, on that note, let's start to wrap it up. It's just been such a peaceful, healing conversation today. This is gorgeous. So I want to remind people, I'll toss Linda a mic here in a second, but I just want to make sure that people know that of course we have all of Josie's links below. Josie sent me a ton of links because she's got so many different offerings. So they're literally all down below. So, and we're also going to be watching her blossom into her next form, her phoenix. She's going through a phoenix right now, where she's going to emerge in her new miraculous form. So we get to see that as well. But Miss Linda, do you want to let people know how much we love them?
This much. You can't even see my arms spread out far enough to show you how much we love you. I really appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you for the conversation and the side. I think everybody was just so enthralled with it that they were soaking in the energy. And I think that's just, this is really a good healing conversation for people, I think. And I want to make sure that if you haven't joined our Facebook group, that you join it so that we can continue conversations there. And that you join us next Saturday. Kat, what's happening next
Yeah,
Saturday?
I'll tell you. Do you want to push some Brady Bunch view so we can,
Oh,
the
I
audience
love
can.
Brady Bunch. I love Brady Bunch.
And Miss Josie, do you want to have any closing final words before I do the final closeout? Do you want to have any, what does your heart want to say right now, you beautiful creature?
Yeah, my heart wants to say that just to remind people that pain in life is inevitable, because that's how we learn and grow. Suffering is optional. We do that to ourselves, but growth is intentional. You choose that.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor. We're so happy to have you here, and I just appreciate you, and I just value you, and I'm glad you are part of our tribe, part of our family now on Third Eye Salon. And yes, next week we are going to have Tamara Richardson. She is a 6-time near-death experiencer. 6 times. She is an evidential medium, an afterlife speaker, a Christ channeler, and messenger. And I've just been emailing her, and she's just a blast. She's just so much fun. So I super look forward to that. And of course, we ask you to go ahead and subscribe if you've not, and to share our content, because we don't do ads here, because we don't want people popping and interrupting conversation, never strangers talking about God knows what. So if you can like and share, subscribe, do all that stuff and pass along our shows to other people, it helps us meet more members of our community and have a bigger heart circle and a bigger circle of love. So thank you again, Josie. You are a godsend. We are so happy you're on the show today. Thanks so much.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.